pleasing everyone else? My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I'm so excited to have my guest, Ali, here this morning. Welcome, Ali.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here, although it's afternoon here in the UK. So
That's right.
hello and good afternoon. And the sun's just come out. Perfect timing.
Amazing. Perfect timing for a beautiful conversation. So, Ali, I'm excited. You also are an executive coach and mentor, and you were really a wonderful light in my life when I took a course back in 2020, and I was introduced to you through that. And since then, I've been really enjoying getting to know you and learning from you. And I'm excited for the listeners to have a chance to meet your beautiful energy today.
Oh, thank you. And it's so reciprocated and absolutely likewise. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. So today I'd love to know first, as always in our podcast, to help others see that they're not alone in this challenge of people pleasing. Have you ever been a people pleaser in your life, and how did that show up?
Oh my God, yes. I think we all are to some extent, aren't we? In terms of the people pleasing, we want to be liked, we want to be loved. And I obviously knew I was coming on your podcast and you were going to ask me that today. And I was just thinking about my journey and the different phases that I have been on. And in the reflection, it was, I suppose, the first people I really wanted to please were my parents. And I think most of us can relate to that. You know, for my mum, it was very much, pleasing her in the way that I looked. She was big on health, big on aesthetics. And I think that's a lot of where I got my body shame from and my self-loathing. There was so much all wrapped up in that. There was also my wonderful dad. I have great relationships with my parents, by the way, although sadly my mum is now dead. I still have a relationship with her beyond the grave, but
Yes.
that's the story for another day. And my wonderful dad, he was very much around. I wanted to please him in terms of the accolades and the achievements and working hard. And, I had an incredible corporate career, probably because I wanted to please my dad and get that validation from him and how well I was doing in my grades and how I was achieving and the size of my paycheck and the titles, that drove a lot of my ambition. So I think from early childhood, that was really where my people pleasing started. And then I met my gorgeous husband when we were 18, 19. And I think when I was reflecting on this, I don't think initially I wanted to please him per se. I feel, if I'm really honest, the people pleasing of my husband, I suppose I should say, really came post children. I know we talked about this before, but when I really established what that was, we met when we were 18, 19, we traveled the world. I was incredibly independent. I had this brilliant job. I was doing really, really well. I was financially independent. I had a really strong sense of myself. I knew everything. And then I had 2 children. And I really felt that was probably, when did it change? I think it was at that point. And I lost a lot of my own self-confidence, perhaps through my identity shifting from being this very professional woman to being this, very loving mother, but then trying to, almost combine the two, be both, and not only the mother, the corporate leader, the loving wife, all of these things, and the people pleasing of my parents, because I'd done everything that they wanted me to. I got married and had children and done this and, was the perfect daughter in every sense. And I think that was really when I lost a lot of my confidence, probably, in having children, which sounds very strange, doesn't it? We are the creators of life. I mean, there's nothing more brilliant than that. Why aren't we so confident in our bodies and so confident in everything that we achieve? We create life, But it was in that, I think, that I began to doubt myself, worry, fear, and I wanted to feel safe. So I ended up feeling that I needed to please my husband more in order to keep that sense of security and sense of safety around me, as that kind of mother instinct is I need him to keep me safe, us safe, and while everything is feeling a little bit wonky within inside me. And I feel that that's where I really came. I've got to keep pleasing him to make sure that he stays, that he wants to stay and protect us. And I think that's where the people pleasing really, really started. I've got to do right by everybody else, because if they're all okay, then I'll be okay. Where actually, what I learned subsequently was the reverse. that
Yeah.
as long as I was okay and I pleased myself, then everybody else would be okay. But it took some big changes for me to recognize that.
Yes, yes. I am, for those listening, I am sitting here nodding along. Ali, wow, that is such a powerful reflection and one I deeply relate to in so many levels. And I'd love to know if we can continue on that train. What are those shifts that
But
you made?
okay. So then I asked myself the question, because I knew ultimately you'd probably asked me the same questions. I've been doing quite a
Mhm,
bit of journaling around this to really make my points really concise. But again, what changed? What shifted? What helped
mhm.
me move from almost like bringing myself back into the forefront of my life and almost going back to that phase of feeling in my early 20s or even in my teens where it was all
Yes.
about me? How did that happen? And do you know what? Again, I can pinpoint it again. 7 years ago, pretty much the date in terms of it was half term 7 years ago, and everything changed.
Mm.
I think when we want something, when we're dreaming about something, when there's a future that we aspire to lean into, the universe works in mysterious ways. Whatever your faith, universe, God, angels,
Yeah.
happenstance, whatever you believe in, I believe that whatever you want, whatever you desire is absolutely inevitable, but sometimes it happens in a way that you least expect it. And
Mhm.
sometimes the universe, God, angels, who whatever you believe in, is going to give you the lessons for you to become that person in order to be able to have those things that you want. And
Yes.
I remember sitting down in my snug. That's a very British term, isn't it? A snug is kind of like a little room with a fire that's like really cozy and warm.
Cozy.
It's like your sitting room. I don't know what the American equivalent is, but or global equivalent, but a snug is kind of like your little snuggy room. And I remember just sitting there, and I just kind of like left my corporate job because it just wasn't working for my family anymore. And I'd started my own business. And I remember just thinking, this is not what I thought it was all going to be. This is not how I wanted it to be or how I wanted it to see. And I started to visualize how I want it to be. And then very, very quickly after that, kind of like the rug was pulled under my carpet. Everything was obliterated. The future that I thought I was on the trajectory to having was just literally sucked out from underneath me. And
Wow.
in that moment, I lost literally everything. Everything other than my two boys, I lost it. I lost my health. I was diagnosed with PTSD, clinical depression. I had insomnia and eating disorders. I lost my identity again as a wife. I lost my trust in myself. I lost trust in other people. I lost, oh my God, I lost even more confidence than I thought I had. I lost faith. I lost my future. Literally, it was like a train had like come through my life and wrecked the whole thing, including
Mm.
my future. And I sat there and I was like, wow, now what? The only thing I can do is look after myself in order to be there for the boys. And it was in that moment everything shifted. It was like, I have to be okay to look after my two boys, who at the time were 6 and 8, I think. That would be right. 5 and 6, 6 and 8, around that. So
Mhm.
really quite little. I was like, they needed me to be, strong. They really needed me. And it reminds me very much. Do you remember the movie The Holiday? That
Yes,
wonderful movie. Yeah.
yes.
And in it, I can't remember the gorgeous old man's name, but it's when Iris suddenly goes, you're supposed to be the leading lady of your life. God
Yes.
damn it. And she's just like, really, and it was almost like I had one of those moments. It was like, oh my God, this is the universe saying, if you want what you want, you've got to be the one who's going to take yourself there. You
Yeah.
cannot give it to your parents. You cannot give it to your husband. You have got to be the one who's going to make this happen. So you've got to build the strength, the faith, the trust, the belief in you, the health in you, the strength within you.
Yes.
Strength doesn't come from the people around you or the circumstances around you. It comes from in here. So I had to spend some real time. And Amy, you and I both know that doesn't just happen overnight. It took me a good 12 months to
Yeah.
really build those solid foundations within me. And it was only because I built those solid foundations within me that it kind of started to match in that outer world. And there were some
Mm.
key things that I did in order to really make those shifts and make that happen.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
moment. It was just like, oh, the tables turned, and it was like, right, the only way that I can go forward is if I focus on me.
Yes,
But I don't believe everyone has to lose everything in order to do that. I think, your podcast and these
for sure.
conversations are to give everyone who's listening that opportunity. You don't have to hit rock bottom. You don't have to lose everything in order to recreate it. It's about knowing that you can do that in that momentary decision that you decide to put yourself first.
Yes, and where you are, right?
Yeah.
There might be different layers of losing yourself, as you
Oh,
said,
yeah.
and, I mean, you brought up so many amazing points, this idea of your identity shifting when you became a mother, this
Yeah.
idea of losing all of your confidence, having this reality that what a gift that your boys were there to be the reminder to you that, like, you get to step up for yourself first and be a part of showing them that you can come back from being lost. You can come back from feeling these challenges. And look at you now, my goodness. So, can you share a few of these things that you did, please?
Yeah, of course I can. And I think just I wanted to just really touch on something really important that you said there. My boys, and I know you're a parent, and I'm sure many of your
Mhm.
listeners are parents as well. It's one of the greatest gifts that we can
Yeah,
ever be blessed with is to be a parent. But and in being a parent, we are also role models. And
yeah,
I want to be the best role model for my boys. And I always want them, to be that little bit of level of selfishness to put themselves first.
yeah.
And in doing everything that happened to me, it was just like I want to be the best role model for them so that they can actually look after themselves first and prioritize them first. So yeah, of course I can take you through a little bit of the journey that happened. I think the first thing that I really did was to really take a grip of my holistic health. And
Mm,
before all of this had happened, I'd started on a journey of really understanding Alzheimer's. My mum sadly had been diagnosed in 2005, and she had died when all of this happened. She just died in 2016, and I wanted to understand very much the history, the research, everything that was going on in terms of Alzheimer's and the preventative kind of things that I could do. I just turned 40, and it was like, what can I do? It's really important that I look after my health, having had lost it, with
yeah.
these plethora of, mental health issues. And I really focused on that. Alzheimer's is the brain, mental health is the brain. It's like, what can I do to support my brain? And if I've got this gene of Alzheimer's, what can I do to prolong it? My mum was diagnosed in her 60s and she died in her 70s. My granny was diagnosed in her 70s and died in her 80s. And it was kind of like, well, my God, if it's that's changing in generations by a decade, that could mean that I get diagnosed in my 50s and die in my 60s. And I was like, holy moly, that is not going to happen. I've got two boys, I've got too much life to live. It's not happening.
Mm,
So I started to learn a lot about holistic health. And what I mean by holistic health, it was learning about mind, emotions,
mm,
physical, environmental, social, economical. It was just like my health is everything. And it was like, what can I do in order to support myself in all of those areas? Once again, not looking to others to create that. What can
mm,
I do to really take control of all of that? And one of the key things that helped me through the loss of my mum, and then ultimately what helped me transition through this piece, was when I'd sat down in front of the doctor and he diagnosed me with this lovely smorgasbord of, mental health issues. And he
yeah.
offered me, beta blockers and all of these different kind of pills and things that could help me cope with my two small boys. I just looked at him. I said, you know what, thank you very much, but I think I'm just going to pass on the medication and I'm going to use holistic methods in order to heal myself. And that's what I did. And I used meditation as my primary medication. And I often share that. And it was this bringing of my awareness back to myself, my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, my behaviors, really living by those principles of awareness, of compassion, not only for myself, but for everything that had just recently happened in my life, and bringing that level of compassion, of non-judgment, of forgiveness, all of that back into my life. And then by really restoring myself with those beautiful principles, I was able to restore my faith, my trust
Mm,
and restore my health. And it took me that period of like 12 months. And I said, I healed myself happy. And my dad was just like, do you know what? You're amazing. What are you going to do? And that was the start of my journey to what
yeah.
was to come really next. And it was through all of this prioritization of myself that it was, this almost created this ripple effect around me, because I'd focused so much on, I just want to be happy. What is happiness to me? What is success to me? What does that look like for me? And how can I create it? I don't need to look to others or circumstances to help me make that. I
Mm.
get to choose. I get to close my eyes and feel happy. I get to choose my eyes and feel peace. I get to close my eyes and just choose all of this to create it within me. And then I come out and I create it outside of me. So it was really, really, really anchoring into that principle primarily that really, really helped me. And I think the reframe of being selfish. So many people say, "Oh no,
Oh,
but you can't prioritize yourself. That's totally selfish." I'm like, yeah, be selfish.
yes.
Actually, because selfish is actually a selfless act if you think about it. You
Yes.
know, it's providing that level of unconditional love. And I love to say it. I wrote a blog post last week very much about, what would I go back and tell myself, before all of this happened? And it was like 20 plus things that I was just like, oh my God, they're actually really great reminders to myself now, but also for everybody else. But one of the key things that I wrote was like, self-love is not just going to a spa and lighting a candle and having a bath.
Yes.
Yes, that all helps, but I think that's got so, I want to say mediarized. I don't even know if
Yes.
that's a word, but just
I
like
think it's
that.
good.
I think self-love, if I think about the love that you or I give, and I know that any parent will give your child, you give them unconditional love. I look at my boys now and I don't care, what they're doing, what they look like, where they go, what they've done, anything. It's just, I love you because you are you. You are part of me. I love you. And it's just like, oh my God, how can we take that level of love? And if you've ever experienced that level of love in your body for someone else, you can actually reflect it and do it back to yourself. So
Mm.
that is the work. That is the work. How can I love myself unconditionally?
Yes.
And when you give yourself that level of intense, unconditional love, it's a restorative feeling. It's powerful and it creates that confidence back into you, because then you don't need to look to anybody else for validation that you're
Yes.
looking for when you people please. It's just like, oh, yes, I've got me. And I
Mm.
actually don't need anybody else to
And
validate me, to
you
support me. That's it. That's where your confidence comes from.
Yes, and you're standing in that power and that truth, and every interaction that you move forward into life with is from
Yeah.
that place of loving yourself and
Yeah.
not having to allow those perhaps negative expectations or energies to penetrate because the love you feel for yourself is so strong. I love it.
Yeah. It's that. It's
Yes.
absolutely that. And I think also, again, just to reshift from the lighting of the candle and getting in a bath,
Mhm.
it's the self-love comes from really, looking at yourself and actually just really seeing how you're treating yourself.
Mm.
Comes from, let's go back to our minds. What are you saying to yourself? What are you thinking about yourself? Are the majority of your thoughts self-deprecating, self-loathing, self-sabotaging, or are you self-loving and self-fulfilling and self-congratulating? And it's like, just shift the self to,
Yes.
how would I be speaking to, and would I say that to, my child? No, my goodness, I would never say that. Okay, so don't say it to yourself.
Yeah.
That the only person that can really big yourself up is you, because no matter how much anybody else validates you or tells you, if you don't believe it, it's not going to make the slightest
Yeah.
little bit of difference.
And you're the only one with you all the time.
Yes. 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 Or yes, 100%. Yes. And I think when you're lying to yourself as well.
Yeah.
Only
Yeah.
you know that.
So we're getting into the habit then of being in awareness of how we are speaking to ourselves and how these words are causing us to feel, and then shifting in that moment
Yeah.
to how can I show myself love?
And I'm sure it was Buddha or something who says, or maybe it's just the principles of mindfulness, but it all starts with your mind. It's how you think is going to influence, how you feel. Those feelings influence how how the emotions
Yeah.
within in your body, and it's those emotions then that drive how you respond, how you react, how you behave, and it's all of those coupled up together that then create your reality around you. So it all goes back to your thoughts and how you treat yourself and how you think about yourself. And that is where you have to start to reframe and go back to the principles of mindfulness that I talked about. It was the biggest thing that helped me. It's just like, as long as I'm aware of what I'm thinking, I can change it. I can choose to change it. But the minute you just don't know, and I think that was the biggest eye opener for me. One of the smallest things I ever did was just to literally start to write down and note down every little thought that I was saying. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so horrid to myself.
Yeah.
I'm so horrid. And I was like, I've got to change this. And it was, again, it wasn't something that happened overnight. It was just, oh my goodness, I'm saying that thing again. Okay, so what would I like to say to myself again instead? How can I choose again? How can I change that? And then by changing that thought and reframing it, you slowly start to rewire and recode all of it. You know,
Yes.
I used to be a coder, Amy. I used to be a coder in terms of, I used to, you know, my
Yeah.
job was to code in a technical sense. And I
Yes.
kind of feel that there's almost similarities in the things that I used to do. If you think about, like, we take hardware and then you write code as the software to change the way in which the
Mhm.
hardware creates, right?
It works.
And
Yeah.
our bodies are so the same. You know, our hardware is us, but
Yeah.
our
Your body.
brain is the software, because it's our brain that's responding to everything that's happening to us and how we change it. So we have to recode our responses to what's happening around us. So that, I suppose, the majority of the work that I do with people is that recoding of the brain, how you're responding. But
Mhm.
then also just to remind yourself of those other principles that hang off the bat of it. Don't judge yourself. Show yourself huge compassion and forgive yourself. You know, you didn't know any different until now. If this is the first time
Yes.
you're hearing it on this podcast, just forgive yourself for the years of self-loathing, self-sabotaging. You didn't know any different.
Yeah.
But then make the choice to change today.
I
Isn't
love
that
it.
the message?
Yes, Ali, and I can feel your depth of passion for this because you've lived all of these
Yeah.
moments, and I really appreciate how you're sharing it in a different way. I work on very similar things with people, and I'm excited for individuals to hear it in a different way, to have it in a different perspective. We're saying the same things. It's about changing what's
Yeah.
going on up in our heads and how we're treating ourselves in order to notice a difference around us and confidence in our life. I'm so grateful for you being here today. This is
It's my
so,
pleasure. You know,
so powerful.
conversations are everything, and little shifts. And sometimes, again, I'm saying to your audience, no matter how many times you say it or how many other guests who've had it,
Mhm.
it'll be the one conversation where it lands for you because somebody said
Yeah.
it in a slightly different way. You
Yeah.
know, we've probably all listened to and heard the same things from, you know, Esther Hicks and Abraham Hicks and Tony Robbins and Marianne Williamson and Wayne Dyer. You know, we've all been listening to the same thing and you can keep hearing it. But I remember it's sometimes they're saying exactly the same thing and it will land with one teacher. And then you're like, oh, clink, clink,
Oh,
clink, 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 clink. And everybody else, what they've been saying, oh, they just said it in a slightly different way. And you
yes.
get it. And you're like, oh, the penny drops, the gears shift, and you're like, oh, and now I'm free. And I
Yeah.
love that when that happens. So you opening up these conversations and speaking about the same topic in different way, are going to land with so many different people. So thank you.
Thank you. So today you have a free roadmap, the
Yes,
happiness report for a
yes, I
unique
love that.
roadmap to your more balanced you. Can you share a little bit about that and how people can
Yeah, of
find
course.
that? Mhm.
So, and I know you talk about balance a lot, and
Yeah.
um, you know, the old paradigm is work-life balance, isn't it? And
Mhm.
I've worked with so many people now where that just, it doesn't work. Like, you know, life isn't that anymore.
Yeah.
For me, the balance comes when you look at the balance of the masculine and the feminine energies.
Mm.
Everyone, whether you're a male or a female or whoever you identity with, you're going to have a level of masculine and feminine energy within you and how you do things. And to
Yeah.
me, the balance comes in mastering those two. So the masculine being the lifestyle strategies and the practical tips, the some of the things that we've been talking today. What can you actually do and change and, you know, control, I suppose, in some ways. But it's then balancing that very much with the feminine energies of also what we've been talking about, mastering your emotions, understanding yourself, your intuition, and that spiritual connection. And balancing those two is going to help you. But again, we can take that deeper. In the happiness report and the quiz that I lead people on is that really we often feel out of balance when we're living out of alignment with what matters to us and
Yep.
what we value. And I think that's really where my whole journey stemmed from, was I was focusing on and prioritizing the things that I didn't value or didn't value as much as the things that I did, and they were deprioritized. So that's why we feel out of balance, how we feel kind of like out of harmony, disharmonized in some way. So how do you shift back into that balance or harmony is by recognition of where I'm out of balance. So through the report, you're going to see where you are prioritizing what really doesn't matter to you and where you're under prioritizing the things that do. And sometimes just, you probably know it, but you're just not willing to see it. And the minute you see it in black and white, or actually it's in hot pink, but my brand colors, the minute you see that, you're like, oh, I know where I need to go and what I need to do. So yeah, it will give you a roadmap and really pinpoint where you just need to make some of those smaller tweaks and smaller shifts so that you can feel better. And ultimately, I know you and I are very similar in our mission in this world, is to make sure that we help people be the happiest self, the healthiest selves, because that's really where you find true freedom to live in this life.
I love
So yeah,
it. That was
come
a
and take that
beautiful
with
wrap up. Beautiful, Ali. So individuals can know that in the show notes, all of the links for you to find you will be there, your Instagram, your website, this free download, so they can connect with you and your beautiful, beautiful energy. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
so
for
much.
being here today.
Thank you. I love having conversations with you, Amy. Thank you.
And to all of our listeners, I want to thank you so much once again for tuning into Power to the People Pleasers. Please stay tuned for our next episode coming soon. Have a great day.